So Armored Core 6 came out a few months ago now, which is a weird thing to say because it feels new to me, like it just came out last week, and I'm still turning it over in my head. It's a game with a lot of ideas that uses its characters and plot very economically. I'm still really impressed by how much it says in such a short period of time overall, and I want to talk about some of the themes I really spotted while playing this game. This is going to be kind of a rambling video, so bear with me. I'm also going to engage in some academic bullshit that kind of annoys me when I see other people do it, but here I am. I'm not really going to treat this like an academic exercise otherwise, so if I seem unprofessional, just deal with it. Like most FromSoft games, the main character of Armored Core 6 is a silent protagonist. Pulling from some plot points in the original Armored Core series, your character is an augmented human, who was subjected to some sort of experimental process that has made them an ideal pilot for the game's main type of mech, the Armored Core. Augmentation has increased their capacity and response time as a pilot somehow, but it has reduced the function of 621's physical body. We don't see much of 621 physically in the game, outside of some first-person sequences and a story trailer. But their situation seems bleak. Based on what we know of augmentation from old games and some details in AC6, it seems likely that 621 is some sort of debt slave, basically sold off to Handler Walter, the game's mission control, and told to buy back their freedom as a mercenary. 621's only true goal, informed by Walter, is to have their augmentations undone, which further drives home their lack of autonomy. 621 does not want the augmentation, so they were likely inflicted against 621's actual will. Similar to the way that we don't know much about 621 as a character, we also don't know a whole lot about the greater world of Armored Core 6 outside of Rubicon, but what we are told is all pretty bleak. It is not a world that values life particularly highly. 621's augmentations have limited their mobility and left them brain-fried, according to Walter. It's not clear if they can even speak. At one point, they show they are at least capable of dragging themselves into a new mech, so the best case scenario is that they are wheelchair-bound. But other pilots have gone to great lengths to have their augmentations either updated or removed before 621, so it's probably worse than that. Since 621's body is so feeble, their skills as a pilot are essentially the only thing that makes them worthwhile in this world, as the cyberpunk capitalist hellscape of Armored Core does not recognize any life as having intrinsic value. 621 is not even allowed to have their own name, as we've kind of talked about earlier. I kind of glossed over it. They've been reduced to a number, basically. They are nothing but their bare essentials, defined by their occupation and nothing more. They are a number, and it's established that many numbers were killed before you, and they all worked for Walter doing the same job. Something that I think is interesting about this, then, that 621 has so little bodily autonomy, is that their armored core basically is their body, as it is the only meaningful way they can interface with the world in their current state. I find a lot of academic ruminations about the body in the abstract to be very annoying, but I'm going to do this anyways. 621's interactions with others are mostly entirely limited to violence as a result of this limitation. You make some allies in the course of the game, but nearly every character you meet is on a countdown before you fight them to the death in a big robot fight. Some of the other pilots in the game seem to like their jobs as mech pilots, but the truth is they're all basically in the same position as 621. Their names are replaced with call signs, and their faces are replaced with what are essentially profile pictures. The only real interaction you get to have with them is a fight to the death in a giant robot, which is pretty cool. Their AC is their body too as far as 621 is concerned, and 621 will destroy it, and thus their body, and thus them. Killing all of them is the only option for 621 to regain their own autonomy and humanity. They get enough credits to undo the surgery and become normal, according to Walter. Who they decide to kill to get these credits is basically the only choice 621 gets to make. Their AC is their body now, and it exists to kill for money, so that is what 621 is going to do. And that is basically what everyone in this game does. The only way to rise up in this world is to kill and get money for it. Now, when I talk about, like, the body in this abstract academic way, I'm not just talking that way because I have a master's degree. I think the game actually really does ruminate on this a lot. So, Allmind, the AI that facilitates mercenary work and runs a virtual arena for combat simulation, seems kind of aware of the interplay between the pilot and their mech. She observes that the corpse, who are, for the most part, really run this world, view the human body as something weak that needs to be overcome. Their mechs often defy the human form, they use tetrapods and tanks a lot, and they focus on overwhelming power to dominate their environment and to subjugate their foes. Meanwhile, the Liberation Front, who oppose the corpse and seek independence for the planet of Rubicon, mostly use their humanoid mechs in comparison. In-universe, part of this is just that the Rubiconians can't really afford anything better, but Allmind seems to consider it a legitimate philosophy of theirs, and it kind of gets across the idea that the Liberation Front puts a greater value on humanity and human life in a way that the corporations never could. Now, Allmind does have an interesting observation, though, about the independent mercenaries, like 621, who have to constantly adapt and reconfigure their armored cores. Their cores are true extensions of themselves because their circumstances are always changing. They don't have a single allegiance, and they don't have a singular concept of their own self, either. 621 fights for just about every faction at one point or another, and then often switches sides the next mission to work for the people they just fought to the death. In at least one job, you switch sides before you've even finished the objective. You're constantly changing out parts of your AC, which are basically 621's body, and you're constantly shifting teams to match your circumstances as well. And that kind of dives into the question of what it means to be a human when all aspects of yourself are in constant flux, be it your mind, your body, your allegiances, etc. 621 has no fixed identity. Other factions and other characters in the game, however, do try to impose an identity of some sort onto the main character. Walter calls you 621, which is what I've been doing, and that's just a number. Canonically, Walter has gone through a bunch of mercenaries before the player, and it's pointless for him to get attached. He sees you as an attack dog, hence why his profile picture is a hand holding many leashes. You get the call sign Raven, a bird, not a dog, which Ire and most neutral parties use to address you, but it was a name you stole off a slag heap in the tutorial mission. It's not really your name, it was some other guy's name. You can try to claim it for yourself as the game goes on, but it's still someone else's legacy you're riding on. Your frequent companion Rusty, V4 of the Vespers, calls you Buddy a lot, and then Balaam gives you the temporary call sign Gun 13 when you work for them. If you finish the Liberation Front's ending, the Rubiconians also call you Liberator, but there's really no name or identity that the player gets to choose for themselves at any point. Walter delegates a lot of decisions to the player, but these aren't really choices that Walter regards as important. These are just minutia for getting a specific mission done. He has greater plans, and he doesn't really think the distinction between the factions is all that important. So 621 only gets to choose who they kill. They can't choose not to kill, because then they would be disposed of as worthless. And also there wouldn't be a cool game about mechs killing each other to play. What really sticks out to me then is that in this world where no one is really allowed to be human, and really no one's life is treated with any value, everyone is constantly showing a lot of humanity, even in the most intense circumstances. You mostly interact with the other pilots through violence. Their mech is their body, and you destroy it without even getting to see the people inside. But you learn a lot about them in the process of killing them. You really only ever hear their voice, but you do get to see the choices they make and the things they say, and they have a lot of personality to express. Even the corporate war criminals can't help but express their own unique quirks and kind of deeper truths about themselves. Balaam, for example, is about equally evil as their competitor Arquebus, but you can't help but like them a little bit more because their leader, G1 Michigan, is constantly cracking off jokes in a fucking war zone. He's a really, truly hilarious character, and he refers to his missions as field trips, and has some hilarious things to say if you fuck up or go off script. He also remembers the names of all his soldiers, even the really disposable MT pilots you just go through like water. Michigan's just got a lot of personality for someone who's the face of the military-industrial complex. V7 Pater is also a favorite. He's from the Arquebus side of the corporations. And he seems to have this sort of split personality going, where he's constantly shifting from abject sorrow as you kill his comrades to a bit of glee when he realizes there's an opening for promotion now. With neither sentiment coming off as fake, he does seem legitimately mad you killed his friends, and also pretty happy that his number goes up as the game goes on. These guys are just numbers at the end of the day, just like 621 is. You know, Pater is V7, and you know, he might end up being V3 depending on the route you take, but at the end of the day, that's a number. The corporate mercs are ultimately still as expendable as 621 is. They get some perks from working for the corporations, better augmentations, better pick for parts, but at the end of the day, they are treated as just objects to be thrown away. But even in the face of this, they show a lot of humanity and a lot of individuality that just can't be gotten rid of, even in the most dire of circumstances. And on the subject of the corporate mercs, I think one of my favorite moments in the game is actually the fight with G6 Red in the mission MIA. You can rush in from out of nowhere and save him from some Arquebus pilots, but the events of the game have really taken a toll on Red. Up until this point, no one really cares about who you kill, since it's all just business. 621 is not seen as a person with autonomy. They're a weapon to be aimed, maybe like an attack dog or a gun. Holding them responsible is like blaming an attack dog for attacking, or like blaming a crocodile for eating a baby. You know, would you blame the crocodile? The baby was right there. Who let the baby there? It doesn't make sense to hold 621 accountable. The better option is just pay them to work for you next time, right? G6 is the last of the Red Guns, though, the last of Balaam's military, and he kind of has the moment where he processes this, that he is the sole survivor, and he realizes that you are the one who has probably singularly killed most of his comrades, and he snaps, and if you lose the fight against him, Red totally drops his drill sergeant military facade and delivers a really chilling line.
Sound off! Sound off, Gun 13! Now you're a real Red Gun.
I think in this moment right here, G6 Red treats 621 with more humanity than anyone else in the game does, by treating their decisions as important and holding them to account for those decisions. I'm not really gonna pretend I understand everything that happens in the third and final ending of the game, but it does seem to me that the game wants you to question what it means to be human in this route, and also just broadly to be human in the world of Armored Core. In this route, you get to fight O'Keefe, a Vesper pilot who used to be a spy for the secret faction of the game that hopes to change the meaning and future of humanity in this very odd and sort of mysterious way. O'Keefe used to work for this faction, but he's come to be kind of afraid of what they're planning to do, and he argues that the status quo is preferable to an unknown future. His arguments aren't entirely without merit. His fear is pretty understandable. I played this game like 5 times, and I don't even really understand what happens in this ending all the way. It's all a big unknown, pretty much a huge question mark. But I don't think you're meant to interpret O'Keefe as correct in his fears. The world of Armored Core, though, as is, this capitalist future where we've achieved incredible feats of space travel and this sort of impossible technology that we only put towards, infinite exploitation and warfare, is one that is truly inimical to humanity and human development. Like, if you want to talk about humanity losing all that makes it recognizable and all that makes it valuable, like, you're already there. The world that they live in is that world. It is that nightmare. There's really not much you could do to make it worse. O'Keefe can't even get real coffee anymore, and he's consigned himself to that kind of miserable reality. You're meant to understand O'Keefe, but I don't think you're really meant to believe he is correct in any meaningful way. No matter how scary and uncertain the future might be, the status quo of the world of Armored Core is not worth defending. And if the worst of the worst can still express hopes and dreams and individuality under those conditions, I think the point is that humanity can find a way to thrive even under the effect of whatever the fuck happens in the Coral release ending. And speaking of the Coral release ending, the final cutscene of the game really sticks out to me in large part because of the way the characters in it behave. Their movements look more natural even though they're in the mechs. It doesn't seem like they're really moving like machines ought to. Like these pilots inside these giant robots have maybe achieved some higher state of being, a true synchronization with their mechs and thus themselves as described by Allmind. They move like the mechs really are their bodies, like they've finally achieved some ownership of the situation they're trapped in. Like I said, I don't fully grasp what's happening here. Maybe if someone knows, they can explain in the comments to me what's going on in this ending, but I do think this ending, despite everything that happens in it, is meant to be read as more hopeful than some of the others, or at the very least more hopeful than the world of Armored Core was before 621 had their way with it. FromSoft games on the whole are really fascinated with this contrast of like grim certainty and hopeful uncertainty. The Fires of Raven ending is grim and brutal and pretty evil in a lot of ways, but it is certain, it's definite. It has an epilogue. We know exactly what happens in the aftermath of it, and we can adjust for it accordingly. The other endings do not get that level of certainty. We don't know what will happen next, or if it will be better or worse for humankind. But, at the very least, it is a future that won't be the same as the present, so maybe it's worth putting fear of the unknown aside and embracing the risk. The future is uncertain, but it won't have Arquebus in it, and that does mean it won't have Snail, so it's probably better than what you had before.
Blast! Blast!
Confirmed. V2 Snail, down.
Sounds like it's over.